In fact, I got to be the guy at a big conference to say, the era of art for art's sake is now closed. It was a failed 50-year experiment that we could just improve the lives of artists, we could make better art, we could open up the doors of our high art institutions to many more people, we could find new business models for our institutions, and we did not do that. And so we now close the book on that experiment and go back to art for many sakes that had worked well for the previous 30,000 years. And art for art's sake is one strong and healthy thread of that, but we need to prepare artists for a world where it is art for many sakes. And the funders in the US, I can say, one of the few things we can be proud of is a many-year conversation with our funding agencies. And because they're largely private, philanthropic, corporate, and foundations, they're a little more flexible than government entities. But over time, we've had long conversations about the state of the field and what it's going to take to advance it. And funders have really recognized that it is their, not just responsibility, but opportunity to hear and come to understand what needs to happen next and support innovation with funding. Not impose innovation with funding, but work with those who get funded for an understanding of where we all need to be moving in order to expand the relevance and the value, the public value of the arts. So our funding agencies, we've been in conversation with them, and consistently they come back to the training of artists as one of those crucial gateway points where change is possible, and the kind of porosity and fluidity of the young artist's expectation development. And that's where they will fund, in our case, usually experiments. For example, my art and education course at Juilliard was a funded experiment that went so well the institution picked it up. Another funded experiment, also at Juilliard, was a mentoring program where we paired up artists with a mentor from a different artistic discipline. If we paired them up from the same discipline, they went right down the same tunnel of careerism. But if we paired them up across disciplines, if we paired a young violinist with a studio art painter, suddenly they could begin to see a larger world of being an artist in the world. So that program has been essential for opening up or sort of combating the gravitational forces of careerism. So we tend to have funding around experiments that we try to document pretty carefully so that they become transportable and part of our larger pool. In terms of recommendations or thoughts around teaching and learning, the most important, I guess it's a wish, not because it's happening not very widely in the US, but to me it constitutes better practice, is ongoing conversation within each institution about the issues of pedagogy. Not just how do we get students to learn technique better, but what does the feel of a 21st century studio need to be? How do we actually make the membrane between what happens in the studio and what happens out the studio more significant? I had two conferences I led in the US a year ago, both of which placed students, conservatory students, at the center of the conference and required the teachers and administrators to sit around the outside and listen to them without talking for 3 days. You can imagine how that felt for most of them. But in both cases, we got the same message from the students, which I will share to you as, I think, pretty representative voice of American young artists in training. And pardon my French, but what they basically asked for was more oh shit learning. And what I mean by oh shit learning is they wanted more project opportunities that took them out of the school confines into a project challenge in the real world where they suddenly had to go, oh shit, I don't know how to do that, and created the fastest learning they could. For example, they said every semester we should be required to produce a concert in New York City or produce a gallery show in New York City, because I'm going to get to that point and then go, oh shit, how do you get an audience to show up? And that next 2 weeks of figuring out that will be the fastest learning about how to be an artist in the world. And then I can go back into the studio and work on my technique and my artistry with a whole different perspective for how it's situated in the world. So they were clearly asking for regular occasions of oh shit learning in the world that forges this balance between the inside world of the arts and its vitality out in the world. They also asked for oh shit learning opportunities that thrust them into communities that don't already love the arts. I refer to this as being inside the arts club or outside the arts club, and they felt they really should be forced to go have experiences outside the arts club and look at how you can make that interface dynamic and feel good for the artist and give them a sense of efficacy, not just within the people that know the language, understand the language, and are willing to buy a ticket or go to your show, but in fact people who don't give a damn about what you do, and find out how do you connect what you're coming to know with what the average person cares about. And in the US, we have to admit the arts club is only about 5% of the whole population. So that's 95% of our millions of people that are not currently feeling they have a direct relationship with our students. Just one last note. The one assignment I used to give my Juilliard students that used to terrify them more than any other, they would lie awake for weeks in advance of this assignment in fear of what it was, which was simply this: they had to get on a New York City public bus and engage people in substantive conversations about classical music before they got off. This was total terror for them. They thought they were going to get beat up or, somehow thrown off the bus for talking about Shostakovich. But what they found out was, almost invariably, if they start talking to people about music in general, rather than classical music in particular, it was a great revelation to them. Wow, like everybody's got a really big life in music. Yes, that's right. And if you enter the art form through that general ownership of where everybody lives in relation to an art form, suddenly people are curious to explore your particular channel of it